Hey, what is happening, guys? How are you doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to part 2 of our Q&A. So last time, just a couple of days ago, I did make part 1 of this round's Q&A where I responded to 10 questions from you guys that were asked of me on the YouTube community post that I made. This time, I wanted to pick 10 questions from the Twitter post that I made. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm cheating a little bit because even though I got slightly less questions on Twitter than on YouTube, which is kind of surprising, I got so many good ones that I actually wanted to answer more than 10. So I think I have like 12 or 13. I cheated, I broke my own rule, but it's my rule to break, so what are you going to do? We're going to answer, like I said, more than 10 questions from you guys on Twitter. So many good questions, so many questions I couldn't get to, even a couple from friends of mine and followers that I know that I usually always try to respond to those. But in this one, I was like, I got so many other good questions from fans. I just gotta answer them. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm not gonna waste any more of your time. Let's just jump into the first question. And the first question does come from a good friend of mine and a fellow YouTuber, Andre's Restart, who is Andre's Restart and Bandana Charmander on Twitter at Andre's Restart. What is up, man? Thanks so much for asking a question. I was, of course, featured on his podcast about a month ago or so, and we talked about a ton of Nintendo and mostly Metroid stuff, other Nintendo news and theories, and it was just a blast. Great channel, really good dude. And he asks me, what is your favorite final boss of all time? Well, it's not an exciting or interesting or surprising answer, but it is Metroid Prime, right? And it's not like, oh, well, Metroid Prime is your favorite game, so of course Metroid Prime is your favorite final boss. You're just being biased. And it's like, no, that's only if you go like with a backwards line of thinking, where you think from the end result of knowing it's my favorite game, and so you go backwards and put that logic together that way. For me, the way I look at it is part of the reason Metroid Prime became my favorite game is because after playing and experiencing that incredible game all the way through from beginning to that final confrontation with Metroid Prime, by the time I get to Metroid Prime and I'm like, this boss is so amazing, it kind of is what helped solidify the game as not only just really good, but also my personal favorite game ever made. And I just love just the scale of it. Just, you get glimpses and just rumors and stories from the lore that you're scanning throughout the game about a Metroid Prime as you learn about the space pirates experimenting with Phase-On and using them on Metroids. And they create the elite pirate who's like one of the most difficult bosses like ever. And you get through that guy and you're like, the final boss has got to be this Metroid Prime thing, because you do read about Metroid Prime in one of the log entries. And then you see it, and it's just the reveal where it looks like an upside down skull face. And then he turns over and he's this gigantic crab thing. And you're like, that's a Metroid? And then you got to use all the different beams. And then you fight the final form of him when he kind of goes underneath the thing. And so anyway, it's a cop-out answer, but it's my true answer. Like, my favorite game of all time also has my favorite final boss of all time. To me, it just makes sense. The only other one I want to give a special shout out to is the Ganon fight at the end of the original NES Zelda, mostly for nostalgic reasons, because I was 5 or 6 or so when that game released in the States and the NES released in the United States. And it probably took me until I was maybe like 7, 8, 9 years old or something to just beat it on my own and actually see the final boss, that fight with Ganon. And it was just the coolest thing, man. It's just getting to a final boss in those days in the 80s, man. It just had a different feel to it. And because Zelda was so epic and monumental, it was just really exciting. I mean, Ganon was a legendary character at that time, the way the community talked about video games. So that's my honorable mention, is Ganon in the original Legend of Zelda. Next question comes from my buddy and also fellow YouTuber Jay Fleming, who's Jay's Geek Life at Jay Fleming on Twitter. My good buddy Jay. I've also been on a podcast with him several times, talking Star Wars and talking Metroid. Really great dude with a great channel. He says, why do you think Star Wars ignores Genndy Tartakovsky's animated Clone Wars series? And Jay, I have to ask, do you maybe mean this Clone Wars series? This animated Clone Wars series that most people have probably not seen? I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard of them, honestly, because it's been a while. These are amazing, absolutely incredible. To my knowledge, they don't exist on Blu-ray, so I'm really proud to have these 2 DVD sets, and these are really expensive if you tried to find them now. It's incredible. And the only thing I'll say is what I've heard a secondhand account of an interview with George Lucas where he was kind of asked about these and he talked about them a little bit. And the main takeaway that I remember from that was that by the time he decided to make the newer version of Clone Wars that we all know, the full, the long form, now 7-season series that introduces Ahsoka that he made with Dave Filoni that happened, coming off of the release of Revenge of the Sith, that really is what he saw as the true new canon version of the Clone Wars stories. Some of it kind of matches up well with this version, and then a lot of it does also, these do kind of conflict with each other too, so that's where it's tricky. And I think the reason it's just not talked about now is, one, George Lucas is gone, and two, they're not technically canon. As amazing and beautiful as they are, they're not canon, so I'm pretty sure that's why. Next question comes to us from Unhelpful Yoda at UnhelpfulY on Twitter. What is up, buddy? Thanks for the question. And they ask me, what's your thoughts on The Last of Us 2? Should there be a 3? So this is a, dangerous waters to tread into. Obviously, Last of Us 2 has been a very hot topic, very divisive and controversial for some people. If I was to give the super quick Q&A breakdown, I'm not going to go into too much detail because it'll take up too much time in this video. At the end of the day, by the time I finally got to the end and rolled credits, I think the game is absolutely great for the most part. It does so many things well. It's a great continuation. The first game, just so you know, is one of my top 5 all-time favorite video games. The first PlayStation 3 release, The Last of Us, absolutely incredible. Love, 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 love it. Last of Us 2, ultimately not quite as good, whereas I would give The Last of Us 1 like a 10 out of 10. I think I fall at like an 8 out of 10 on The Last of Us 2, which is not a bad score and not at all a bad game. But some of the biggest criticisms we hear people talk about, and I don't want to spoil too much, but we know there's a different character we spend a lot of time with, and people don't like that character for a variety of reasons. Some of them are story-based, some of them are not. I will say, I like that character, okay? There's things I hate about that character, actions that character does that I hate, absolutely. But that's part of the conflict and the nuance of the story. And I will say, I do like that character. What I did not like is the way they paced the game and how much time we spend with that character. To me, it broke the experience in the middle, and there was a period where I actually thought I hated The Last of Us 2. But they saved it at the end so strongly that it makes the game, to me, very, 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 very good, even though it's not masterful. Should there be a 3? I'm not going to go into detail to not waste too much more time, but I will say, some people say no. I would definitely like a 3. I think it's the right call. I think there's a very, very easy way that they could do it. I can't spoil and tell you how that is, but at the end of the day, yes, I would like one more game to just wrap it up. Next question comes from Ryan at SnackPack84. And Ryan asks me, with all the new hires that Retro is making for Metroid Prime 4, do you think they are making a huge push for a multiplayer mode, or maybe even a new co-op experience with a new character introduced? Now, funnily enough, I'll spoil this. One of my next videos, maybe even my next video that will go up, is actually going to be about Metroid Prime 4 and some theories that I have about the multiplayer thing. Not so much rumors or behind-the-scenes stuff, just kind of my own thoughts. I've got a lot to say about the whole multiplayer component to Metroid Prime 4. But to answer your question here, kind of in the quicker version, do I think that they're making some moves, especially with hires like Borderlands and Call of Duty, you're probably asking, that have to do with incorporating multiplayer into Metroid Prime 4, I would say there's a good chance that, yeah, I actually think that might be what's happening. I don't 100% know if it has to do with the hires that they're making. It seems to add up when you see a Call of Duty person coming over. You're like, okay, well, they're going to do online multiplayer. So yes, maybe. But I think it almost has less to do with the talent that they're hiring and more to do with what I think becomes a smarter game plan for them to do with this game. And you guys know me. I don't need or even really want multiplayer in Metroid Prime 4. I love Metroid Prime 2 Echoes to death, but I don't really care about that multiplayer. Hunters was cool. Federation Force, you guys know, it's pretty cool. It's really not that bad of a game, even though it's not like a Samus Metroid thing. When it comes to Prime 4, I don't need them to do it. Focus on the story, make it just blow our minds in the best way possible, the single player. But I do also think there's a way to do multiplayer in 2021, 22, whatever this game releases in, that could be good. And I think it might be smart for Nintendo to keep the conversation and the life of Metroid Prime 4 alive for longer than just the initial release when everyone beats it after the first couple of weeks that it's been out. I think there's almost a business reason for them to do it. Not microtransactions, hopefully. More just, like I said, for the ongoing life of Metroid Prime 4. I also think that it could be a way to sell online service to people, which Nintendo's going to care about. And I think it's also a way to sell it to slightly more people. You know, online multiplayer is so big nowadays, especially for younger gamers. I think that online multiplayer in, co-op or competitive whatever in Metroid Prime 4 becomes an easier way for them to maybe sell it to the slightly younger market too. Some people who might even be too young to have played any other Metroid game, but they know it's a big deal. They have the Nintendo Switch. Everyone buys first-party Nintendo games on the Switch. So to me, it just all kind of makes sense. Next up, we have a question from Romeo at Cicaba GT. I don't know if I said that right. Cicaba _GT. Romeo asks me, I want to start a podcast. Leaving aside the topics to talk about, how do you decide the format? Scripted, basic line to follow, or whatever comes when I start recording, etc.? Well, really good question. I would say, obviously rule of two review, the videos I make are not podcasts, but I do plenty of podcasts. I've been on the Spawncast, several times, like 20 times or something. Plenty of other guest spots on other podcasts. Like I said, I mentioned my buddy Jay Fleming. I mentioned Andre's Restart. I plan on doing my own podcast very soon. And I used to do podcasts on iTunes way back in 2010 and 2011 with my buddies in Denver about movies and games. So I do have podcast experience, and I feel like I treat Rule of Two Review videos as like mini little 15-minute podcasts. That's kind of the approach that I've always had, and it's very much by design. Only I talk about one video game topic or like one Metroid topic for 20 minutes. And so you ask, how do you do it? Script it, basic line to follow, blah, 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 blah. So, first thing, of course, everyone is going to be different. So I will say at the end of the day, it really comes down to what works for you, what's most comfortable to you, and what you prefer to do. So you might have to do a little bit of playing around to figure out just for yourself what you like. I will tell you that when it comes to podcasts, both the podcasts that I used to host and I think every podcast that I've done or continue to do nowadays on YouTube, where it's like really big on YouTube, pretty much they all have some kind of script and some kind of outline, I don't think it's like giving away too much to say, like on the Spawncast, for example, which I've done so many times. We always kind of know about what the topics are going to be. John, is pretty good about letting people know we're touching on these things tonight. And there was a period where he was sending out like a document to people to kind of let us know, which was really cool. It would be like, hey, like, since you're going to be on, here's kind of the stuff we're going to go over. Last couple of times, I don't think we did that. And I haven't been on in like 5 or 6 months now, maybe even longer. So I'm not quite sure if that's changed. Other podcasts I've been on, it's just been something where either in DMs, it's shared to me before we go on, or the way they operate now, I mean, we're always like, we're offline but connected and chatting for a while before we finally decide to go live on pretty much any podcast on YouTube that's live. And so a lot of times in podcasts I've done, we've just gone over that stuff, as we're chatting before we decide to actually go live and go over the topics. So, long story short, a lot of podcast script, a lot of people feel like, hey, these are the 4, 5, 7, 10 topics I'm going to go over, or we're going to go over, and you do that. When I first started making Rule of Two review videos, when I was kind of trying to fit multiple topics into one back in 2014, 2015, I actually did give myself some notes. I would give myself just like, I want to hit on this topic, I want to hit on this topic, don't forget this part, don't forget this part. But again, I stopped doing that because I felt like I stopped needing it, and I got so much more comfortable doing this that it just wasn't really helping me, I guess. Nowadays, I've just got this down. I love doing it. I got so much to say. I can pop my computer, my microphone, my camera on, and I'm just like boop, 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 and then I can just go. So that's what works for me, and I think you should try some of those tricks for yourself. And I don't know. I hope it goes well, man. I definitely want to hopefully see that you've got a podcast out there brewing and doing its thing. Next question comes from a fairly good buddy of mine on Twitter, Marcus Sellers at Marcus Sellers. A lot of you guys might know him. He's kind of an industry insider kind of person who knows and has talked about and said and broken things in the past. That's all I'll say about that. Really good guy. Very, very nice guy. And he asks me, what was your favorite movie from last year? Well, for me, it's very, very easy. 2019. And it's Alita Battle Angel. And what I will say about Alita Battle Angel is, yes, part of me is biased because I grew up as a fan of the original manga series, both of the original manga series, like the actual original, which I have all of it, and the sequel series Alita Last Order, which I have all of that as well. Not as good, but still good. And then there's been some other stuff since then that I've actually not read. And then also the original OVA anime. There's 2 30-minute animes that cover the first, like, 2 issues of the manga. And that most of the story of the movie was about. And so I've loved Alita since the early 90s as a teenager. I was probably 13 or 14 when I discovered it, okay? 93, 94, before a lot of you guys were probably born, I was watching and reading Alita Battle Angel. And I'm sorry, Battle Angel Alita. That's what it's actually called. The United States North American name is Battle Angel Alita. The movie called it Alita Battle Angel. And I've loved it. I love that character. I was so excited for the movie. I was reading rumors on IMDb forum message boards in like the year 2000 when James Cameron bought the rights. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be great. And it never happened. Comes out last year. And you guys, I love it. I love it. I love it. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. I think it was an incredible adaptation. Rosa Salazar was just flawless in that role. And the direction and the vision of Robert Rodriguez and James Cameron was so good. I'm telling you, as somebody who knows the source material and the original character, they nailed it. Some things, like the changes to Hugo, I didn't mind, but they were different. And some of they moved things around narratively that I was surprised about, and I struggled with my first viewing. But every subsequent viewing, I just decided not to care, and it's amazing. So for me, it's Alita Battle Angel. Next question comes from the only fan who I've actually ever met in real life. Mr. Derek Price, Dericles260, what is up, man? Really good to have a question from you, buddy. He says, have you watched the Avatar: The Last Airbender TV series? If so, what are your thoughts on it? It's my favorite show of all time, and Prince Zuko is hands down my favorite character of all time. Also, Uncle Iroh is greater than Yoda. Derek, how dare you? Oh my goodness. I'm just kidding. So yes, I've seen it. Actually, my now fiance got me to watch it a couple of years ago. And I mean, I'd heard Avatar was great my whole life, finally watched it. I was probably 35 years old when I watched it for the first time, and it's amazing. Avatar: The Last Airbender, you guys, so good, so deep. It's very funny, but there's a lot of really deep themes in it, which is very Star Wars-like. And also, for a lot of people, Derek, I don't even know if you know this, Dave Filoni, who now works at Lucasfilm and studied under George Lucas, also worked on Avatar: The Last Airbender. So pretty cool correlation. And I like that you say Prince Zuko is your favorite character of all time, because the way I see his character, he's very Anakin Skywalker, who's my favorite character of all time. So pretty interesting how that all works out. So either way, you have very good taste. Yes, I've seen Avatar. Yes, I love it. And next up into the Shark Tank is Monkey Face at Rebel Rose Rage. And she asks me, there's been a lot of great success with Bloodstained Ritual of the Night and its spin-off games for Curse of the Blood Moon. Or is it Curse of the Moon or Curse of the Blood Moon? Either way. So what would make a good spiritual successor to Metroid? Not just another Metroidvania, but a true successor. Also, would it need to be 2D or 3D? Great question. I love me some Metroidvania games. I love Metroid, duh. I love Castlevania. And I don't push back on the Metroidvania term the way some people I know do. And I know why people do, and like I get the argument that they're making, but for me, I don't mind it. And I'm like a Metroid guy, but I'm not that much of a purist that I have really an issue with it personally. And yeah, Bloodstained is great. I've recently been replaying it. I've played the first Curse of the Moon game. It's really awesome little 8-bit throwback. What would make a good spiritual successor to Metroid? I mean, I think that we have some games that kind of achieve that effect. Games like Shadow Complex in the 7th gen was a big one. Obviously, nowadays, we have games like Ori and the Blind Forest and Hollow Knight, and those are both amazing. So in a lot of ways, you could argue that there's plenty of games that already are spiritual successors. We're even getting games like Dead Cells and stuff that comes out. And there's just so many games that are now borrowing from what Metroid, and to a lesser degree, Castlevania really kind of did and created for the industry. So I'm already loving those games. Is there anything else we need that could do it in a different or more effective way? Tough to say. I guess the only kind of answer I could think of for that, honestly, would be if Nintendo decided to make their own new game that was like a Metroidvania, backtracking, weapon upgrading kind of experience. That's a new, original Nintendo first-party joint, right? Like, this is a Nintendo joint. We're doing the Metroidvania thing, which we basically created, but we're doing it again with new characters in a new world with new gameplay. And I think that could be cool because, I mean, the Ori games and Hollow Knight are so good. They don't need to do anything different to be amazing. But I do think there's something to be said for Nintendo's specific approach to 2D platforming and backtracking and Metroid kinds of gameplay. So you ask if it would need to be 2D or 3D. I mean, you could do it either way. My preference would be 2D. I wouldn't say no to a 3D game, though, and Nintendo's obviously, and other companies have done that kind of in 3D as well. But I just think, either we're playing games like Hollow Knight and Ori and Dead Cells, or we're getting another stab by Nintendo at the genre with new characters and a new IP. That would be a dream come true to me. I would love to see what they would do. They could go sci-fi, they could go fantasy, they could go present day, they could go medieval, they could go, I don't know, Mario? No, don't go Mario. Actually, forget that, Nintendo. Don't listen to me. I don't want a Mario Metroidvania game. That's like too much worlds colliding. Next question comes from Hiba Hussein. I hope I pronounced that right. At Hiba Hussein 14 on Twitter. And he or she asks me, if Prime 4 doesn't blow up like we are expecting it to, then what do you think will happen to the Metroid franchise? Also, absolutely love your vids. Keep them coming. Well, thank you so much. I very much appreciate that. And so, if Metroid Prime 4 basically isn't a big hit, is what you're asking. And I covered this on a similar topic probably about a year and a half or 2 years ago. I honestly can't even remember if this was before or after the delay. This might have been before the delay, actually. Where I discussed just to put the idea out there and have a conversation, I discussed what happens if Prime 4 comes out and isn't very good, okay? So it wasn't so much about, like, the sales success, like you're asking. It was just what happens if the game comes out and we expect it to be a 10 out of 10 like Prime, like the first Prime, and it's like, oh, this isn't good. It's like a 6 out of 10. Or even like if it's really just a stinker, like a 3 out of 10. What would that do to the Metroid franchise if that happened? I obviously don't expect that to happen, but that was the nature of the conversation just to talk about it. You're asking now what happens if it's not a huge hit. I would say if the game isn't a big sales hit, but is still very well received critically and by the fans. That's the key. None of this Last of Us back and forth kind of Metacritic, user score, review score stuff. Like, none of that nonsense. If the critics love it, and if the fans and the Nintendo fans and the Metroid community and everyone loves it, and they're talking about it, and we're all pumping it up and hyping it up online, I think that, it's still going to hurt the franchise if it's not a big sales hit, but I don't think it would be like dead, for lack of a better term, if at least people rally around it as a good game. I think Nintendo will still find a way to keep it going, maybe with less risks and maybe with less expensive games. Maybe they stick to just 2D kinds of cheapy experiences for a while and maybe more spin-off games like Federation Force. I don't know. However, I will say this. If it's not a big sales hit and if people don't like it, I don't know. I get a little bit afraid when I think about that situation because I want to say that a franchise as legendary and long-running as Metroid should be ironclad safe. But I think after the last 10 years and the problems that people have with Other M and Federation Force, really low sales for Federation Force, I think Other M did crack 1 million, which is like, it is what it is. It's not terrible, but it's not great. Samus Returns was a great game that did sell decently, but all the controversy around Other M and Federation Force and just now the fact that Nintendo put all sorts of money and manpower into Prime 4 just to scrap it and pay a brand new chunk of change just to redo it again. I mean, Prime 4, the budget is going to be so huge. It's like a Solo, a Star Wars situation where they basically paid to make Solo twice is what happened, right? And so the fact that it also didn't make much money hurts even more because it wasn't just a regular 1-movie budget. It was basically 2 movie budgets. And with Prime 4, we're kind of in a similar situation, right? They paid to start the game once, and now they're paying another team to start it again. So there's like 2 Metroid Prime 4 budgets that are going to be part of the entire final cume of what it costs to make this game. So right away, losing money and being low sales is just not going to be good for the franchise. But if people also just don't like it, and the Nintendo's going to be like, maybe we just can't make Metroid games anymore. Maybe they give up on the franchise. I mean, maybe. It's tough for me to say it would happen, you guys, but we'd have to be open to the possibility if that happens. Luckily, here's the thing. You've heard me say this before, and I'll double down here. I'm going to stay positive and optimistic. One, I expect the game to be phenomenal. It's going to be great. Nintendo is sparing no expense to make this a good game. The fact that they restarted the game and spent that money shows that they will do anything to make it good. And I do think it's going to sell very well because of what I said on the last Q&A video. Everything sells on the Switch, and I think Nintendo's going to market it like crazy. So I don't personally have any of these worries. Next question comes from Mighty Ryan BLM at Mighty Ryan, and I believe the BLM probably stands for Black Lives Matter, and I will say, yes, they absolutely do. I agree. So, Mighty Ryan says, does the gaming industry still need E3, and do you think E3 should come back in 2021? Wow. So, does the industry need E3? No. I don't think that they need E3. But are we hurting without E3 right now? A little bit. I think that what we're learning in the wake of the Summer Games Fest and the IGN Summer of Games, earlier today, recording this video, was Ubisoft's Ubi Forward thing that really was not all that great and was not received all that well. Nintendo's Treehouse, not the best reception for several reasons. I liked Paper Mario, but obviously not the best reception. It certainly seems like this year, the pandemic is creating this situation, but this year, without E3 and Gamescom, and I don't even know what's happening with TGS at this point and all this stuff, I think we're all feeling the pinch. We're all missing E3, and we're missing a year where conventions can happen like normal and our previews can come to us like normal. So I don't think we're yet at a situation where we've learned the industry can't survive without E3, but I think we're learning that it's hard without E3. What we were expecting and what we're used to, not getting it this year, it does certainly suck. Do I think it'll come back in 2021? I truly do. If it's safe to do so, I know people disagree with this. They think E3 is already dead and buried. I don't think that. I think that next year, if it's safe to do so, yeah, we're going to see E3. Okay, and the next question comes from Kieran A. Buckley, Black Lives Matter. Yes, of course, like I said, they definitely do, in case there was any question about that. At KA Buckley 3 on Twitter, who asks me, what are your favorite and least favorite moments from the Star Wars movies? So this is a great question. I have so many different answers for this. It's insane, like bursting out of my brain. I have so many answers. I think I would say when it comes to my favorite moments, there's so many. I love the pod race scene. I love all of the lightsaber fights. I love the I love you, I know thing. So much stuff on Endor. I'm somebody who likes the Ewoks, for example, so there's just so many things. Yoda versus Count Dooku, like the list just goes on and on. My number one favorite moment is very easy for me. It's even what my tattoos represent, and it is the throne room scene with Luke squaring off against Darth Vader in front of Palpatine, in the Emperor's throne room on the Death Star. And that whole scene, that whole lightsaber fight, all of the emotion and weight and drama behind that scene. And then most specifically, my favorite moment in all of Star Wars is I am a Jedi like my father before me. Now, it would take me so long to describe to you why that moment and that line specifically means so much to me and is my favorite moment. It would almost require its own video for me to truly give it the amount of time that it deserves. But I will say, for a lot of the obvious reasons, just everything that builds to that moment, what Luke has been learning about on his journey as he even discovers who he is, who his father was, who Darth Vader is, and then what that line means in that moment to the Emperor about his father, Darth Vader, dying on the floor behind him, and his little head nod moment. Like Mark Hamill does this great I am a Jedi, like my father before me. Like the little head nod back. Just, oh God, it's so good. It just gives me chills. It's so good. The other moment I want to talk about is an understated and probably underappreciated moment. It's like a blink and you miss it moment in Revenge of the Sith that I think most people would never think about. But for me, this moment has always resonated with me, right up almost in the same sort of tier as the I am a Jedi, like my father before you moment. And it's near the end, the climax of the Anakin and Obi-Wan duel on Mustafar, after they've already been fighting and knocking each other around, after they were already on that big, claw that is like falling down the lava waterfall, and they jump off of it and they're kind of floating on the river of lava there. It's the one moment in the whole fight where they actually take a break to talk to each other. And it is so powerful to me. Most people would never even think about it, but to me it's so powerful. It's so well done and well written. And it's when Obi-Wan says, "I have failed you, Anakin. I have failed you." It's like he's realizing, he's accepting his fate, but also maybe hoping he can change him in some last-ditch effort to sort of save his friend. And Anakin is just like, I should have known the Jedi were plotting to take over. Like, it seemed so obvious, like, just like Chancellor Palpatine was saying, yada, yada, yada. And Obi-Wan is like, Chancellor Palpatine is evil. And Anakin's like, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. And then when Obi-Wan says, "Well, then you are lost," that moment, you guys, that line to me and what it means, and it seems so simple, it's not obviously brilliant the way I am a Jedi like my father before me is. Excuse me. It's got a different sort of subtle brilliance to it, but it just shows that it's the moment that Obi-Wan finally has to give up, and that there's no way to save his friend. His Padawan, his friend, somebody he's known since he was a little boy. It's like, that's it. And we talk about Force-sensitive people in the mythos and the lore and the universe of Star Wars being on paths, the path to the light side, the path to the dark side. And so when we look at that analogy of being on a path, and then we compare Obi-Wan saying, "You are lost," it's like, you're lost on your path. You've been walking on your Jedi Force-sensitive path, but clearly you've gotten lost on your way. And now, where are you? Look at where you are. We're fighting. You force-choked your pregnant wife. You went against the Jedi Order. You killed Jedi and you killed younglings. Like, you are the most lost. You probably can't even find the path you started on. And the emotion and the weight behind it, the whole exchange, the two of them just kill it in that scene. So anyway, I'm making this long in the tooth. The point is, I love that moment. That's my other favorite. As far as least favorite, I'm going to be real with you guys. I'm one of those guys that's like, I don't like the Disney Star Wars stuff. Here's the thing. I like The Force Awakens and I like The Last Jedi. I do like those movies, and I know people hate The Last Jedi, but I do like them. They're not amazing, but I like them. I hate The Rise of Skywalker. It's really the only Star Wars movie I absolutely do not like. All of these movies are filled with my least favorite moments, okay? All three of them. If I'm going to pick least favorite Star Wars moments, it's in these three movies. And if I was to pick, like, one to talk about, it's definitely the end of The Rise of Skywalker. I would say when Rey is fighting Palpatine, there was so much promise to the idea, but I think they didn't know how to deliver on the weight and the drama and the themes and the character arcs of both the characters in that trilogy, and then any semblance to try to connect them to the prior 6 movies. Like, just don't even talk to me about how poorly they messed that part of the story up. And I think the whole, they came close with the voices of the Jedi. It wasn't exactly what it needed to be, for me at least, but it was close. And then, the whole final thing where he's like, "I am all the Sith," and she's like, "I am all the Jedi." And then she just does this, like, thing, and she, like I said in my review, she, like, Kamehamehas him out of existence, with her 2 lightsabers. It just was so surface level, not satisfying. I just really, and the fact that it was the end of that trilogy and what they tried to tell us was the end of the saga, which in my opinion, those movies are not part of the saga. I can consider them canon, but I don't consider them part of the Skywalker story. And I'm like, that's just such a bad moment. It's just, I don't know, you guys. It just didn't work for me. So, yeah, those are my answers. Our next question comes from Mansana at Mansana, or Mansana, on Twitter. And they ask me, "You think there might be another development update on Metroid Prime 4? It's been a while. They've done them on Breath of the Wild somewhat by showing gameplay builds every year leading up to the game. Is Metroid not of that caliber? It'd be nice if they did a Metroid Direct for the 35th anniversary." So I see what you're getting at. It's a weird comparison you make with Breath of the Wild because With Breath of the Wild, yes, we got a couple of development updates. Like, they revealed the game, and then we, in 2014, then we saw it again in 2015, then we saw it again in 2016, and we saw more and more each time until eventually they actually released the game, I should say, in 2017. And so I would say the difference with that is that when you look at how Metroid Prime 4 was revealed compared to how Zelda was revealed, like, Zelda was revealed with, like, kind of gameplay with, like, footage, Onuma, like, is like, here, look at Zelda, and, like, here's the world, and then you see one of the Guardians chasing Link, and it's like a movie. It's not really gameplay, but you see Link jump off of his horse and use his bow and arrow to fight the thing, and you're like, wow, we've seen the game. Like, we understood at least the base level visual style, the art direction, the tone, the world of Hyrule. We saw stuff. We even saw Link. And so it was like a real game at that time. With Metroid Prime 4, how was that game revealed? With nothing but a logo. And so between the reveal of Metroid Prime 4 and that logo and today, even if you don't even pay attention to the delay and the restarting of the game, it's not really a fair comparison because clearly they have not yet been ready to even show us the game. Now, if we had already seen the game in some form, if Nintendo had been comfortable enough to show us even 30 seconds of kind of gameplay, or even like a CG movie, heaven forbid, whatever they might have wanted to do, something to break the seal of this is the video game content you might see, then it's a different story. And it's like, yeah, they might be willing to, maybe once a year pop up with like a 2 or 3 or 5 minute video where they kind of show or talk about the game and show some small progress in the gameplay and in the visuals and just what the game looks like. They might be willing to do that. But we haven't popped that seal. We've only seen a logo. And the delay certainly pushes that reveal back even further because they had to restart the game, right? So I see what you're saying. I would say that, and you know what? Here's the thing. I'll say this. I don't actually think we're ever going to get something like that beyond just like the normal way a game company would do that. Because I think at this point, they're not going to show us Metroid Prime 4 until this new restarted version is very close to being done, is in its damn near final build, and is probably months away from releasing. I don't think that they're going to be playing around anymore when it comes to Metroid Prime 4. I don't think they want to risk showing it too early. I mean, I don't even think they want to show it to us and say, hey, it's coming out in a year. I think they want to finally show it to us and be like, hey, here it is. It's coming out in 5 months. I really think that that's going to be the plan, Whether that's the launch of the next console or not, or just Switch, who knows? But I think they're going to make sure that this game is over 90% complete. It's exactly what they want. There's very few items they have to complete, and it's close to release. I don't really see us having that long of a time between reveal of footage and release of game to give us those updates like what they did with Breath of the Wild. So that's just my personal guess and theory, but I feel pretty good about it. And would you believe it? That is the final question for today. Like I said, so many to go through. So many great questions between both the first video and the second video from YouTube and from Twitter. I always appreciate you guys being so into these and having so many questions for me. It gives me great content, great things to talk about, and also a great way to interact with you guys. I love being able to do that and give you shout outs and stuff in the videos. You guys really seem to enjoy it. So lots of Metroid stuff, quite a bit of Star Wars stuff, and some other industry related things that we talked about, some music and some drumming. So I will remind you here at the end, if you want to be a part of these in the future, definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel. Absolutely be following me on Twitter. I'm very active, obviously, on both places. I mean, I'm always posting videos, and I am always tweeting. Every day I'm tweeting. So definitely follow me on these places so you can be involved with these the next time I put a call out. So this was a ton of fun, and sorry for the questions I could not get to, but just try next time, and maybe I'll have a chance to respond. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of 2 Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.